All right, hey everybody. Happy Wednesday. This is Matt, also known as Mr. Ruddy, and I'm here with another warm up and activity that I think could be a lot of fun to do while we're spending a lot of time at home these days. This one is called Who's at Your Table? And I always try to make sure we give credit where credit is due. I first had a chance to do this activity at an Oregon Writing Project Renewal Day. So, here in the state of Oregon, the Oregon Writing Project hosts speakers, workshops, and activities that are designed to refresh teachers and give us a fresh start and new ideas and other things that we can work with. On that particular day, the guest speaker was Matt De La Pena, a really remarkable young adult novel writer, and he had a lot of interesting things to tell us about writing from perspective, writing from culture, and how to let nuance and context really set the stage for how characters develop. And he led us through this warm up called Who's at Your Table? So, who's at your table? He gave us a little bit of time to reflect on who has impacted us as writers. Now, this could be who has impacted you as a writer, as a teacher, as a lot of different things. But in the spirit of the activity, we'll go back to writers for just a second. So, I grew up reading a lot of books, got read to a whole bunch growing up. It seems like it was almost a nightly thing, so thanks a lot, Mom and Dad. So, when you ask me who's at my table, I think first I'm going to do my best to draw a table. Other artists, you can make your own interpretation of this. The table could have legs, it could be three-dimensional. I'm going to stick with where the range of my skill set keeps me. Anyways, at my table, and I'll use initials because if I write the whole names out, this is going to take a little bit longer. But at my table, one of the people who definitely has a seat at my table is Jack London. I grew up reading Call of the Wild, one of my favorite books about the dog Buck and all the adventures he goes on and how he sort of rediscovers himself through trying times. So Call of the Wild's been with me for at least 35 plus years, and I know it's probably a familiar and favorite book for a lot of other people. Another seat at my table of authors and writers who have influenced me is definitely Alex Haley. Speaking of books that take you on journeys, Roots was one of the longest and biggest books I read in, I don't know, late grade school, early junior high. And there was such a feeling of arrival when you get to the part where Alex Haley is connected to his ancestors. Let's give another seat at the table to Ta-Nehisi Coates. So a lot of Ta-Nehisi Coates' writing first became familiar to me by way of his articles and his discussions on cultural impact and race and diversity in America. His most recent novel, The Water Dancer, I'm part of the way through, and it's a pretty vivid description of a very unique individual with special talents. I'll just leave it right there. Go ahead and go pick it up. It's certainly worth a read. And sitting right alongside Ta-Nehisi Coates, I'm certainly going to put Toni Morrison. And when you read through both of their books, you'll find out what a talent they have for weaving words together and really capturing the richness of moments and the richness of ideas. I'm going to save not the last two seats, since these aren't real seats, these are existential seats, these are imaginary seats. But I'm going to set two seats aside for Beverly Cleary and Beatrix Potter. So one of the really nice surprises about moving to Portland, Oregon, having grown up reading the books like Ramona Forever and Henry Huggins, is that here in Portland there is a spot called Grant Park, and there's a fountain that's dedicated to Beverly Cleary and all the childhood books that she wrote. And there's a statue there of Ramona and Henry Huggins and his dog Ribsy. And so when I was first riding around Portland and I passed Klickitat Street, I had no idea that it was a real thing from the books I read growing up as a kid. So one thing I feel pretty lucky about here in Portland, Oregon is there's a lot of rich history tied to authors and books that we read growing up. Beatrix Potter, for everyone who grew up reading Benjamin Bunny and Peter Rabbit and all those other things, this was something at least once or twice a week that my mom and dad read to me, and I still have a copy of that original book. So from the very beginning all the way to just a couple days ago, books have played an incredibly important part of my life. And these are the authors that I think stick out in my memory as being very prominent in the writers who have driven my love of reading. So one of the things I would invite you to do with your sons, daughters, friends, siblings, as much as you can during this time, is to sit down and have a conversation about who's at your table. Now, you're more than welcome to take anything I share and invent it in your own way so that it's useful and it feels meaningful to you. I've had students suggest that instead of who's at your table, it could be who's at your party, who's on your playlist, um, all sorts of things. Who's on your road trip, right? Who do you want to end up spending 6 to 8 hours in the car with? So once again, very simple warm up. If you got out some construction paper or some scratch paper and decided to all sit around as a family and talk about who's at your table. Speaking of family, I wanted to add a little bit to this. And if we are talking about who's at your table, and right now might be a time when people feel like they're pretty far away, I would say if I'm going to say who's at my table in terms of family, I'm going to certainly go with my mom and dad, my sister and brothers. I'm going to go with my meme and pepe, which is what we called my grandma and grandpa growing up because of their French Canadian history. It's surnames, names of affection for your grandmother and grandfather. I would also love to have Myrtle and Chris Preston at our table for a family dinner, to get a chance to talk, to get a chance to see each other's faces. Myrtle helped babysit me and my brothers and sisters growing up when both of my parents went back to work. So every morning I got to see Myrtle strutting around the kitchen with the curlers in her hair singing Tina Turner. So when we talk about memories and family and the people we feel connected to, I think activities like these are a good way to feel closer to each other, even if we happen to be geographically far away and can't spend as much time around each other as we want to. So, I invite all of you to sit down, take 15, 20 minutes sometime, and talk about who's at your table, who's at your party, who's on your playlist, or who would be on your road trip. All right, there'll be more coming up in the future. I'm trying to upgrade my materials and make things a little easier to see, a little easier to work with. Once again, if this helps, then I'm glad. Let's all stick together right now and like lean in towards each other so we can stay connected. All right, there'll be more. Talk to you later.